The small Irish town of Glenwood seemed like the perfect place to live. The ocean hugged the cliffs, the streets were filled with laughter on Saturday evenings, and the old stone church bells rang every Sunday morning. From the outside, everything appeared calm, simple, and beautiful. And in the middle of this quiet town lived Clara, a young woman who seemed to have everything a person could ask for. She had a decent job at the library, a circle of friends who invited her to dinners and music nights, and a family that cared for her. People often admired her beauty, her intelligence, and her gentle smile. Many would even say, "Clara, you're so lucky. Your life is perfect." But what no one knew was that when Clara returned home and closed her door at night, she often sat in silence, staring at the walls of her small apartment, feeling an emptiness she couldn't explain. It wasn't sadness exactly, and it wasn't depression. It was a deeper kind of void, as though her heart longed for something she couldn't name. Every morning she woke up with the same question: is this really all there is to life? She had tried to fill that emptiness in many ways. She traveled to new cities, hoping the excitement of different cultures would awaken her. She bought beautiful clothes and decorated her apartment with warm colors. She joined community events, danced at local gatherings, even dated once or twice. For a while, those things distracted her, but the stillness of her heart remained unchanged. Sometimes, Clara would stand on the cliffs overlooking the ocean, watching the endless waves crash against the rocks. She felt small before such vastness, and in her heart, she wondered, why do I feel so empty when the world around me is so full? One evening, after a long day at work, Clara decided to take a walk by the harbor. The town was quiet, the sky painted in hues of orange and purple. Children laughed in the distance, couples strolled hand in hand, and fishermen prepared their nets for the night. She should have felt at peace in such a setting. Yet, as she walked, tears welled up in her eyes. A memory surfaced, her childhood. She remembered being a little girl, sitting beside her grandmother who often told her, "Never forget, Clara, when you feel alone, speak to God. He always listens." As a child, Clara believed those words. She even whispered small prayers before bed. But as she grew older, life got busy, and faith became something distant, something she thought belonged to old traditions, not to modern life. Now, standing by the water, that memory stung her heart. Maybe her grandmother was right. Maybe her emptiness was not about having more friends, or more money, or more adventures. Maybe it was about something higher, something spiritual that she had ignored for too long. For the first time in years, Clara felt seen. She felt known. She felt loved, not by a human voice, but by something greater, something eternal. That night, she lay in bed with tears on her cheeks, but her heart no longer felt heavy. The emptiness wasn't gone, not fully, but for the first time, it was being touched by something beyond herself. She drifted into sleep with a single thought in her mind. Maybe God really is here. Part 2. The Whisper of God. Clara woke the next morning with swollen eyes, but a strangely peaceful heart. The memory of the whisper, "My child, you are not forgotten," still lingered inside her. She replayed it over and over, wondering if it had been her imagination, a dream, or perhaps some kind of wishful thinking. Yet, no matter how much she tried to reason it away, the warmth that had filled her chest the night before could not be explained. She walked to work at the library, her steps slower than usual. The world around her seemed unchanged. The fishermen calling out at the docks, the chatter of children on their way to school, the bells of the church tower marking the hour. But Clara felt different. It was as though a veil had been lifted, and for the first time, she could sense that something invisible was watching over her. At the library, she found herself distracted. She shelved books absent-mindedly, her thoughts returning again and again to the whisper. When her friend and coworker, Mary, asked if she was all right, Clara simply smiled and said, "I didn't sleep much last night." But deep down, she was wrestling with something larger than exhaustion. By evening, Clara couldn't keep it to herself. She returned once again to the cliffs overlooking the ocean. The waves crashed against the rocks, their rhythm steady and unchanging. She took a deep breath and whispered into the wind. "Was that really you, God? Or was it just me imagining things?" Silence followed. Only the gulls cried overhead, circling the sky. She felt foolish for asking. Perhaps it had only been her mind playing tricks on her. Perhaps her heart was so desperate for comfort that it invented a voice. But then it happened again. A calmness fell over her, stronger this time. She felt it not just in her chest, but through her entire being, as if an unseen hand had rested gently on her shoulder. And once more, inside her spirit, she heard words, not loud, not forceful, but unmistakably clear. "Trust me." 2 words. That was all. Yet those 2 words shook Clara to her core. Her knees weakened, and she sank onto the grass by the edge of the cliff. She pressed her face into her hands, trembling. These were not words she would have spoken to herself. These were not empty echoes of her own thoughts. The words carried a weight, a life, a presence that was undeniably beyond her. "Trust me." But trust him with what? Clara had no grand dreams. She had no pressing decisions. Her life was ordinary, predictable. Why would God speak to someone like her? And yet, the whisper refused to leave her. On her way home, as she washed her dishes, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, "Trust me," remained with her like a song she couldn't forget. Days turned into weeks, and Clara began to notice small changes. When she walked through the market, she saw people differently, not just as faces passing by, but as souls, each carrying their own hidden struggles. When she spoke to a neighbor, she listened more carefully, sensing that kindness mattered more than casual conversation. Even at the library, she felt drawn to books she would have ignored before, memoirs of people who had experienced faith, hope, and miraculous encounters with God. One afternoon, she found herself drawn to an old Bible that had been left in the donation pile. Its pages were worn, its cover faded. Out of curiosity, she opened it. Her eyes fell on a verse she didn't remember ever reading before. "When you seek me with all your heart, you will find me." Her breath caught. The words leapt from the page, as though they had been written just for her. She closed the book quickly, her hands shaking. Could it be that God truly was speaking? First in a whisper, now through words written centuries ago. That night, Clara knelt beside her bed. She hadn't prayed in years, not since she was a little girl. She didn't know the right words or how long a prayer should be, but she spoke from her heart. "God, I don't understand why you've spoken to me. I'm nobody special. I don't even know how to follow you. But if this is real, if you're really here, then I want to learn to trust you. Please don't leave me." And once again, though no voice echoed in the room, the same peace wrapped around her like a blanket. Her heart was steady, her breathing slowed. She knew, without being able to explain how, that he had heard her. From that moment forward, the whisper of God became the compass of her soul. Sometimes it came as words, sometimes only as a deep knowing in her heart. But it always carried the same message. Trust me. It didn't answer all her questions. It didn't map out her future. But it gave her enough light for the next step, enough courage to keep moving. And that was more than she had ever had before. The old man's face lit up with relief. Together, they carried his bags across the street. When they reached his home, he turned to her and whispered, "You have no idea how much this means to me. I was praying for someone to come." Clara froze. Praying? She hadn't expected that word. Her heart raced as she realized this small act of kindness, this seemingly ordinary decision, had been guided. She had walked without a map, yet somehow she had stepped exactly where she was needed. That night, Clara lay in bed reflecting on what had happened. Perhaps trusting God wasn't about waiting for a dramatic life plan. Perhaps it was about listening in the little things, the nudges, the whispers, the moments when compassion called louder than convenience. Over the next weeks, Clara began practicing this new kind of trust. She paused more often to listen. When a friend called in tears, she stayed longer on the phone, offering comfort. When a stranger sat alone at the cafe, she smiled and struck up a gentle conversation. None of it seemed extraordinary, but each step felt guided. Yet there were also difficult moments. One afternoon, Clara faced a decision at work. A shipment of rare books had arrived, and her supervisor mistakenly cataloged one as worthless. Clara knew it was valuable, worth more than the entire shipment combined. If she kept quiet, no one would know, and she could easily purchase it herself for almost nothing. For a moment, temptation burned within her. But then came a whisper, not loud but steady, "Do what is right. Trust me." She closed her eyes, sighed, and told her supervisor the truth. The book was corrected, cataloged properly, and sold to a collector. Clara walked away empty-handed, but her heart felt strangely full. For the first time, she understood that trust also meant surrendering her own desires. Still, the hardest test came later. Clara received a letter from her brother in London. He was struggling with debt, and though they had not spoken much in years, he asked her for help. Clara's savings were modest. Giving him money would mean delaying her own dreams of traveling abroad. She wrestled with the decision, unsure what to do. That night, she prayed, "God, I don't know if I can do this. What if he wastes it? What if I never get to travel?" Again, the same whisper, "Trust me." With trembling hands, Clara sent the money. She didn't know what the outcome would be, but she chose to believe that God was writing a story larger than her own. Weeks later, a second letter arrived. Her brother's tone was different this time. Humble, grateful, even apologetic. "Your gift," he wrote, "wasn't just about the money. It reminded me that I'm not alone. Thank you, Clara." She held the letter close to her chest, tears welling in her eyes. She had walked without a map, and yet, step by step, her path had led to something meaningful. Clara began to see that faith was less about knowing and more about trusting. Like the ocean waves she loved to watch, God's leading wasn't always predictable, but it was constant. And though she didn't yet know where this journey would take her, she finally understood that she didn't need a full map. She only needed to follow the voice that said, "Trust me." Clara had never thought of herself as extraordinary. She was quiet, ordinary, and content to live unnoticed in her small seaside town. But as the weeks passed, something about her began to change, though she wasn't fully aware of it herself. It wasn't dramatic. She didn't suddenly glow with light or perform miracles. The transformation was subtle, like the slow turning of a season, barely visible at first, but undeniable. It began with her eyes. Where once they had carried the dull heaviness of weariness, they now sparkled with a softness that people noticed. At the market, the vendor who sold her bread paused one morning and said, "Clara, you look lighter these days. Happier somehow." Clara smiled, unsure what to say. She hadn't tried to look different. She simply carried a quiet peace that others could sense. Her coworker Mary noticed it too. One afternoon, when the library was slow, Mary leaned across the counter and whispered, "Clara, forgive me for saying this, but something about you has changed. You used to seem distant, like your mind was always somewhere else. But now, it's like you're actually here, fully present. What happened?" Clara hesitated. She wasn't sure how to explain without sounding strange. Finally, she whispered back, "I think God has been speaking to me." Mary's eyebrows rose. "Really?" she asked, not with mockery, but with curiosity. Clara only nodded, a faint blush rising on her cheeks. She didn't try to explain further. How could she put into words what could only be felt? Still, as the days passed, more people began to notice. It wasn't only her eyes, but also her actions. Clara listened more carefully, spoke more gently, and carried herself with a quiet strength. She wasn't perfect. She still had moments of frustration, fear, and doubt, but those moments no longer defined her. Instead, she seemed to draw from a deeper well, one that never ran dry. One rainy afternoon, a young boy wandered into the library, soaked to the bone and shivering. He said nothing, only sat in the corner, hugging his knees. Most people would have ignored him or called someone else to handle the situation. But Clara walked over, knelt beside him, and offered her warm scarf. "Would you like some tea?" she asked softly. The boy looked up, his eyes wide. Slowly, he nodded. Clara guided him to a small reading nook, brewed him a cup of tea, and sat with him until his aunt came rushing in, relieved to find him safe. Later, the boy's aunt hugged Clara tightly. "You didn't have to do all this," she said, tears in her eyes. but you treated him like he mattered. Thank you. Clara walked home that evening, her heart swelling with quiet joy. She hadn't done anything remarkable. She had simply listened to that inner whisper and chosen kindness. But somehow, those small choices were shaping not just her own heart, but the lives of those around her. The transformation deepened when Clara faced her own struggles differently. In the past, when loneliness struck, she would drown it out with noise, music, busy work, endless distractions. Now, she sat in the stillness and prayed. She didn't always hear answers, but she always felt the presence that reminded her she was not alone. When worry about the future tried to overwhelm her, she repeated the words that had become her anchor, "Trust me," and somehow peace would return. Her friends were puzzled by her calmness. "Clara," one of them said during a dinner gathering, "you used to stress about everything, your future, your job, your family. Now, even when things go wrong, you don't panic. How do you do it?" Clara set down her glass and smiled. "I stopped trying to control everything. I realized I'm not the one holding the whole world together. God is, and He's holding me too." The table grew quiet. Some smiled knowingly, others looked confused, but no one could deny that Clara was different. The change wasn't only noticed by others. It was felt deeply within Clara herself. The emptiness that had once haunted her was now filled with a sense of purpose. She woke each morning not asking, "Is this all there is?" but instead whispering, "God, what would you have me do today?" Sometimes the answer was simple: help a neighbor, listen to a friend, smile at a stranger. Other times, it was more challenging: choose honesty when dishonesty would be easier, forgive when bitterness seemed justified. But each choice shaped her, carving her into someone stronger, gentler, and more alive. One evening, as she walked home along the cliffs, Clara paused to watch the sun sink into the ocean. She wrapped her arms around herself, the wind tugging at her hair, and whispered aloud, "I don't know where this journey is leading, Lord, but I know I am not the same woman I once was. You are changing me, and I am grateful." The waves roared below, the sky flamed with color, and in that moment, Clara felt it again. The whisper, not in words this time, but in presence. She was being transformed, step by step, into the woman she was always meant to be. And though she still walked without a map, Clara
heart
never
was
set
no
out to be
longer
afraid. She didn't seek attention, nor did she try to impress anyone. Her journey had always been personal, an inward search for meaning, for God, for a voice that had once whispered into her emptiness, "My child, you are not forgotten." But light cannot stay hidden. As weeks turned into months, the quiet change within Clara began to shine outward in ways she couldn't control. It wasn't about what she said, it was about who she was becoming. One Sunday morning, Clara decided to step into the small stone church at the edge of town. She hadn't been inside for years, not since her childhood. The wooden pews creaked, the stained glass windows cast colorful light across the floor, and the air carried the faint smell of candles. She slipped quietly into the back, hoping not to be noticed. The service was simple, nothing grand, just hymns, prayers, and a short sermon about faith. Yet as she sat there, Clara felt tears filling her eyes. It wasn't the pastor's eloquence, nor the choir's voices. It was the unmistakable presence she had come to know, the same one who had whispered to her on the cliffs, in her apartment, in her silence. At the end of the service, an elderly woman approached her. "I don't know why," the woman said softly, "but when I looked at you during the hymn, I felt peace. Like God was near." Clara was stunned. She had done nothing but sit and sing quietly. Yet somehow, her journey with God was radiating outward, touching others in ways she didn't understand. Clara began to realize something profound. The whisper that had transformed her heart was not meant to stop with her. It was meant to flow through her into the lives of others. She became a source of quiet encouragement in her community. When people were weighed down by fear, she offered calm words. When loneliness shadowed someone's life, she extended presence and kindness. When conflict arose, she carried peace into the room. One evening, Mary, her friend from the library, confessed in tears that she felt like giving up on her marriage. Clara didn't try to fix everything with advice. Instead, she listened, held her friend's hand, and finally whispered, "You are not alone. God hasn't forgotten you. He's closer than you think." Mary's tears didn't stop immediately, but something shifted in her gaze. Later, she told Clara, "That was the first time in weeks I felt hope again." Clara began to see her own life differently. She no longer believed that purpose was about grand achievements or distant adventures. Purpose was about presence, carrying the light she had received into every small corner of life. One night, while walking home under the stars, Clara reflected on her journey. She remembered the emptiness that once consumed her, the whisper that broke through her silence, the steps of trust she had taken without a map, and the transformation that had slowly changed her. Now, standing beneath the vast heavens, she understood the final piece. She had become a vessel of light. The emptiness that once haunted her had been filled, not just for her own sake, but so that others could glimpse the reality of God through her. She didn't need to preach sermons or write books. Her life itself had become the testimony. That evening, she prayed once more. "And now, use me. Let my life shine, so that when others see me, they see you." A deep peace settled over her, stronger than ever before. She felt no fear of the future, no burden of uncertainty. She knew she would face trials. Every life had them. But she also knew she would never face them alone. And as she gazed at the stars, she sensed the familiar presence surrounding her once more. Not in words this time, but in assurance, a steady, unshakable truth. She was loved. She was guided. She was light. From that day forward, whenever people in her town spoke of Clara, they often said, "There's something about her when she's around. You feel hope." Clara would only smile, never claiming credit, never pointing to herself. For she knew the truth. It wasn't her light. It was the light of the one who had whispered, "Trust me." And in that truth, she had finally found the fullness her heart had been searching for all.